Hi, welcome back to my channel. So today I wanted to talk about a situation that has created quite the buzz in the online aviation community. It centers around a YouTuber named Trevor Jacobs and his video titled, "I Crashed My Airplane." I wanted to start off by saying that this is all speculation and by no means am I an expert, but I do have my private pilot's license and I'm currently in college to become a commercial pilot. With my private pilot training, I have been taught extensively how to deal with engine failures, and this video caught my attention because of how he dealt with his engine failure. With most videos I've seen of small aircraft crashes, the pilots have been praised for their ability to deal with the situation. On the other hand, Trevor's video has been mercilessly attacked by the aviation community in his comment section and on Reddit. His video raised quite a lot of alarm bells for pilots, including myself, as he did not follow correct procedure for dealing with an engine failure, and there's also aspects that led a lot of people to believe that it could be completely staged. Since it was uploaded, it's currently at 15,000 dislikes to only 2.4 thousand likes and has garnered a lot of scorn from pilots across the internet. So while many people have been focusing on whether or not he completely staged the engine failure, I also wanted to look at his options if it was a real engine failure and how badly he handled it if in fact his engine did fail for real. If this was him reacting to an actual engine failure, it is worrying that his immediate thought was to jump out of the aircraft at thousands of feet above the ground where there's lots of options for him to try before resorting to jumping out of his aircraft. So Trevor took off out of Lompoc Airport on November 24th, 2021, with his destination being Mammoth Lakes, to do some snowboarding and to go paragliding to spread his friend's ashes, which he shows multiple times in the video. He made it approximately 50 kilometers or 30 miles into his trip before suffering his engine failure and bailing almost immediately when the engine failed. I decided to map his flight path and engine failure location to find out his options and to see if his flight path actually made sense or if it is entirely staged from start to finish. So he starts off his video with a slideshow with information about his flight. Most notably in this slideshow, he mentions that there was no safe place to land. A quick scan of satellite footage finds that this is incorrect, as there is a large field directly below where his engine failed, as well as a lot of options just outside the mountain range behind him, which he could easily have glided to at his altitude. He doesn't mention his altitude in his video, but it is estimated that he was around 9,000 feet. Given a safe estimated glide ratio of 8:1, this means he could glide up to 22 kilometers or 13 miles, which is much farther than the distance to the fields directly outside of the mountain range behind him. Even if he was as low as 7,000 feet, he would still have plenty of altitude to get to these fields. He then opens the video with a sponsorship, which is a big red flag for me, as a quick scan through his last 30 videos finds no other sponsorships. The original plan for this video was to fly to Mammoth Lakes to spread his friend's ashes, and to me that just seems like a weird video for a company to want to sponsor. If the sponsorship was filmed after, I would understand it, as crashing a plane is quite clickable and they would want to cash in on that. But the sponsorship is clearly filmed with the aircraft that was crashed in the video, so that rules that possibility out. So after the short intro, he starts his flight, flying out over Lompoc, heading northeast and heading pretty directly towards his destination. By using this nursery visible in his footage, you can tell that he takes a right turn and starts flying pretty much east, which is not in the direction of his destination at all. Here's the flight path that I mapped based on landmarks in his video, and the flight path he should have taken if he was actually heading towards his destination. There could be a reason why he decided to deviate from this path, but to me it seems like he deviated to make his no place to land claim more believable. After this, footage shows that he flies past a small lake, which shows that he is heading northeast again, which is more towards his destination, but still way off track for a direct flight to his destination airport. Using references on the ground, it looks as though about 10 kilometers after this lake, his engine failed. So from this point, he stopped showing any footage inside the cockpit, except for a shot of his chest, which is completely unhelpful in determining the problem with the aircraft and what might have caused it. From a view from the wing, it looks as though he pulls the stick back to stop the propeller from windmilling, which he could have done to make his engine failure look more believable. Even if it wasn't to make his engine stop windmilling, it doesn't make sense, as without engine power, the aircraft would need a more nose-down angle to maintain airspeed. So from experience, pilots are taught a very strict procedure when dealing with engine failures. First and foremost, we are taught to try and restart the engine. Then you radio in an emergency and choose a suitable place for landing. In Trevor's video, he showed none of these things, which is really weird, as these should be the first things on your mind when your engine quits. Since he had a parachute, he knew he was going to be fine, so he could have spent several thousand feet trying to restart his engine without being worried that his life was endangered. If this had occurred at 1,000 feet, it would be a different story. I wouldn't blame him for bailing immediately, as you have a very short amount of time before impact with the ground. Since he was at 7,000 or 8,000 feet, it's unacceptable that he bailed so quickly without attempting to restart the engine, turn around and look for suitable landing options, and without calling ATC with information about what was happening. His first move should have been to turn back towards where he came, as he was only about 15 kilometers into the mountains, and at his altitude, he could easily glide that far and still have enough altitude to parachute safely. This would make him a lot closer to civilization without putting anyone's lives at risk, and it would make a lot more sense to do that in this situation than what he did. Almost immediately when his engine quit, he opened his door and started looking down. A quick scan of Google Maps finds a 1,200-foot grass field almost directly below him, which would be a great option for landing. I can give him the benefit of the doubt that he might not have seen this, but I cannot excuse the fact that he did not turn around and head back towards the way he came, which was easily within gliding distance of his location. As a trained pilot, we are taught to look for options for emergency landings, even with a running engine. And I'm always scanning the ground, looking for areas that I could turn back to land on and other options for the event of an engine failure, as they can occur at any time. Within gliding distances, there are roads without trees lining them, and a lot of different fields available for landing. For an inexperienced pilot, the best option may be to parachute, but even for an inexperienced pilot, you should always try and restart your engine, contact ATC, and fly towards a location where it's easy to be rescued. It just doesn't make sense to me that he bailed so quickly without reviewing his options, without calling ATC, and especially without trying to restart his engine. From a quick search through Trevor's other videos, it's quite obvious that he's not an inexperienced pilot, and in multiple videos has footage of him landing in locations that aren't runways. He's landed on beaches, gravel, and grass without worry, and I don't see why this wouldn't have been an option in his head unless the entire thing was staged for YouTube. There's also other worrying things in his videos, such as this one video where he takes his dog for a flight, and apparently the dog jumped into the front seat and was able to disable all of his avionics within 2 minutes of takeoff.
Just taking off, I get hit. The first thing I remember is I get hit in the back of the head, and about a millisecond later, Crimson, 110 pounds, had come leaping full panic into my lap, jams the stick forward. So we're at 100 feet and climbing full throttle, and we just go straight. We're headed straight for the ground. I grab him with both hands, let go of the controls, just full natural instincts. I just chuck him into the back of the plane. He's so scared and out of his mind that he is coming back for more. He tries to jump back into my lap again. And I see him coming, because at this point I'm like, okay, straight and level flight, keep climbing, gain altitude, but I'm gonna keep my eyes on him and see what he's doing. I turn around and he's coming back for a second leap into my lap. And I just punched him in the face as hard as I could and just got him right on the nose. He gets stunned by when he gets back fisted in the nose, and then tries one more time, comes back for more, and then I elbowed him in the nose this time. At this point, I look at the dash, all the avionics had crashed. So when he had jumped forward, all the electronics, all the navigation, everything is just black.
Following the highway because my avionics are having issues.
But I'd never flown that route before, and so the mountains that were coming at me were way too high for my comfort level. So I had to go around this way, kind of tuck around these mountains this way. And at that point, I got completely messed up with my orientation of where I was. I'm just flying through the desert, and I always had a place to land. I'm like, okay, if I land for 4.5 hours, I'm flying, and I saw nothing. There was nothing. Not one dirt road, not one person, nothing.
And then after 4 hours, he finally made it to his destination. These stories from him are just really worrying, and strange because he just does stuff that gets him into situations that he shouldn't be in. Between that and jumping out of his aircraft almost immediately after an engine failure, it seems like he likes to get himself into dangerous situations for the story and video that can come from it. Once he parachutes from his aircraft, he lands very close to it and hikes to it so that he can retrieve his GoPros and take footage of his crashed aircraft seemingly for the purpose of a YouTube video. He then hikes down to the river, which is a decent option. Most of the time, it is recommended that you stay with your aircraft as it's a lot bigger target for search and rescue to see. And since he didn't call ATC about his engine failure, they would not have any idea where he was and would be searching the entire mountain range. He then hikes down along the river and eventually finds a small creek with water and then farmers that eventually find him late in the night. A big part of the video is how long he's in the wilderness and how tough it was for him to make it down to the river and to find the farmers, and the fact that he was dehydrated and exhausted. If he really did have an engine failure innocently without staging it, he should have flown back towards civilization. Even if his plan was to parachute, he could have gotten a lot closer to a town and still safely been able to ditch his aircraft over a forest or a field and then parachute to safety without having to trek through the forest for 6-7 hours. All in all, it's very suspicious that he deviated so far from a flight path that would have taken him to his destination. And the fact that he immediately jumped out of the aircraft after an engine failure signals to me that this is probably a planned event for a YouTube video. He mentions multiple times that he always wears a parachute.
Well, where the hell am I going to land a freaking plane? I'm going to die. That's why I always freaking fly with a parachute. I had an engine out in the mountains, and there was nowhere to land. I always fly with a parachute.
Which is simply not true, because a quick scan of his YouTube videos shows that he never has in a YouTube video. In his other videos on his channel, he is flying a different aircraft, which is presumably his, but the one crashed in this video is registered to someone else, and it's a possibility that he bought it for the sole purpose of jumping out for this YouTube video. All in all, there's a lot of strange aspects of this situation that point to it being staged, from the sponsorship to not following a flight path towards his destination, and the fact that he jumped out immediately when the engine failed without following procedures for what to do in an engine failure. I'm sad that such a cool old aircraft was destroyed in this video, whether he purposely did or not, but I'm interested to see the outcome of the FAA investigation in this situation. Thanks for watching, and I hope you look into this situation more if you're interested, and consider liking and subscribing.